Hey, what's up guys? So today I want to walk you through how we do a strategy session with our clients, which means when we're onboarding a new client, like what does the process look like? So we're just going to show you, pull back the curtains and show you like what happens when we're in the process of bringing on a new client. So we have a couple steps here. Essentially what we do in one session is understand the client's company and market. We do this process stuff through just having a dialogue and doing our own research. Having the client fill out a marketing brief and then just, talking to them. Also, we're in a lot of markets within the education space. So, we have very good insight day to day and just the overall pulse of the market. We already are starting from a good starting point. Two, we understand the client's goals. Is this client looking to add another just 5 students a month? Is this client looking to just fill out the rest of the seats in the classes? Is this client launching a new program, a new division where they want to onboard a lot of students? Is this client looking to get aggressive and 10x the business, within the next 12 months? So we understand the client goals. Every company, client, school has different goals, right? So we understand what the goals are. 3, we're understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the client. Not every company is great at everything, right? Usually companies are good at certain things in certain departments and weak in other things, which also may translate into some companies have preferences in the way they operate. So for example, some companies are really strong at sales and follow-up. Some companies are great at doing like in-person presentations. That's what they're used to. Some companies have the strength of having a great facility, right? Some companies have the strength of being in a great market with tailwinds behind it. Some companies may be in a market timing where they have headwinds against it. So for example, recently, the executive administration was a little bearish towards renewable energy, right, in America. So companies with training programs around renewable energy had headwinds against them. So, we need to adjust the strategy depending on the timing in the market. 4, implementing the highest ROI funnel. We're going to walk through 4 funnels that are working really well right now. And we're going to talk about why we're going to implement them for the client, why we think it's the best path to get the highest return, highest cash flow for the company in the shortest amount of time. 5, discussing the pros and cons of each funnel. 6, we love doing this. The clients love doing this as well. Potential clients love doing this as well. It's together. Just going through the math, going through the projections. It's going to uncover and bring a lot of clarity to how we're going to scale, how we're going to launch. It's also going to bring clarity and uncover things that the company may need to work on and get ahead of. 7, we'll share the onboarding process in this video, how we actually onboard new clients and what does the launch look like? What does the clients need to do? What do we take care of? 8, we're going to talk about once we launch, what's the work style like? What's the ongoing cadence? How often do we communicate with clients? What do we communicate about? And last but not least, we talk about how to scale. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 4 funnels that are working well right now that is helping our clients scale for the past couple years. And right now, the 4 funnels are live webinars, in-person micro events, Miniwebinar, and a 2-call close opt-in funnel. All right, so let's start with the live webinar. We're gonna share the pros and cons of each funnel because, again, companies have strengths and weaknesses, and we need to make sure the funnel highlights the strengths of the company. All right, so most of you guys know what a live webinar is, but it's the sum of the parts done well of how you actually create success. A lot of you guys perhaps watching this have tried, dabbled in a live webinar or two, never had success, wrote it off. We have plenty of clients like that. So we're gonna share this video, like exactly where the pitfalls you guys are falling off on and how to solve that and how to launch live webinars right. Because we have clients making millions of dollars a year off live webinars, just live webinars. So here's an example of a live webinar for a real estate investing coaching program, just showing you what it is. Here's one for a trade school that teaches people, it's an acting school, teaching people how to better actors or break into the acting market. So just showing you 2 contrasting examples. Live webinars work for, I wanna say almost all industries. It works for a lot of different types of industries. You just gotta do it right. So that's why I'm showing you 2 very contrasting examples here. So let's talk about the pros of a live webinar. You can get a lot of people on it. In theory, you get unlimited amount of people on it. You could get like 100,000 people on a live webinar, right? 10,000 people, hundreds of people, 100 people, 50 people, right? 20 people on a live webinar. You can get people from outside your immediate vicinity if you have a physical classroom. So you could go nationwide, you could go global on getting people in one place. If you're the type that's comfortable presenting behind the camera, this is great. versus someone who's not comfortable being behind a camera, they're gonna have a tougher time. But most importantly, tactically, a live webinar is like a group sales call. Imagine you had 100 sales calls lined up and you could just do it in one shot, pitch a lot of people at once and have effectiveness in closing them. So what are the downsides, the cons of a live webinar? There's less commitment than showing up in person. So conversion rates might take longer. The sales cycles might be a little longer than doing stuff, let's say in person. You can't book a consistent flow of sales calls. You'll usually get an influx of sales calls for like one day, the next day, or about like 3 days out max. And you can't frequently run live webinars if you don't have a big ad budget at least. So let's walk through some potential bottlenecks of a live webinar, where the choke points are on not producing cash flow at the end of a live webinar, the number of people registering, and the cost per registration. That's why we do financial projections to understand that cost per registration based on your market. So next is show rates. So this is an example of a live webinar, right? Ads, people register, people show up for the webinar, and then people buy something. How do you get people to show up? You got to do the basic, right? Good email automations, good SMS automations. Those things are basic, but if you don't have it, it's going to absolutely kill you. So for example, we have a SMS reminder that goes out at the time of a live webinar. So the next choke point, bottleneck, could be the call book rate. You want at least 30% of people who show up to book a call. So if that's not happening, let's say you got 50 people to show up, but you're not booking at least like 15 calls, sales calls for the next couple days. The easiest way is to pull up your call to action to book a call sooner. Somewhere around the middle of the presentation. Most people wait till the end of the webinar to do call to action to book a call. Simple things like the calendar link to book a call is pinned to the chat at the top of the Zoom so they can easily find it. QR code obviously would be nice as well. And most importantly, an excellent webinar format. Webinars to do well takes a little practice. So you got to do a couple practice runs, but we have SOPs on how to do engaging webinars. We can walk you through that. And last but not least, once people show up for the webinar, book a call, you want people closing and enrolling and paying, right? So if the close rate is low, again, the close rate, you want to be closing at least a third of the people you talk to that booked calls. So immediate tactical way to increase close rates is take sales calls right after the webinar. We have micro events. These are small, intimate, in-person events on site somewhere. You want maximum 20 people in a room. So here's an example of a college advisory program. It helps students, high school students, get into the top colleges. The market is usually for parents. We started helping them launch an in-person event that's been absolutely crushing for the past couple months. The sweet spot is about 20 people in a room. So let's go over the pros and cons. The pros and cons of an in-person micro event. The pros is that once they show up, conversion rates are usually sky high, especially if you have a decent facility, office, like a school, classroom to show off. If you're a very hands-on program like technicians, HVAC, what are the pitfalls? The cons of small in-person micro events. It's harder to get people registered through ads, and it's harder to get them to show up than an online webinar. You need to have a space where you can fit like 20 people, not even just one time if you're like gonna rent out a conference room. Ideally, this is gonna work well and you can do this like consistently. You must have experience closing people in person. So let's talk about the potential choke points of why an in-person micro event can fail to generate cash flow. The show rate, getting enough people to show up, and the quality of people showing up, right? So if you get, let's say 20 people registered for like coming in person to an event and one person shows up, your show rate is absolute trash, and that's not what you want to do, right? So how do you get at least 20 people to show up in a room? Obviously you got to do the basics, good email automations, good SMS automations. You gotta have a salesperson, or it could be the business owner, manually call and text each registration as soon as it comes in. Last but not least, content retargeting. Once we got someone to register for an in-person event, let's say it's a week out, 5 days out, 2 days out, even tomorrow, we're hitting them with 20 to 30 different videos. A potential choke point for in-person funnels, micro events, is cost per registration. So there's two ways to solve this. At the end of the day, it usually makes sense to even get $50 cost per registration, but we want to get it as low as possible. How do we do that? It's through creatives on our side, messaging, our content for its advertising secret sauce. A little tactical on our side is targeting a little bit outside the target area, because there are still people interested. They're willing to drive an hour to come to you. So you could go a little bit outside of your target area. Let's go over our Miniwebinar / VSL funnel. If you're not familiar, VSL is a video sales letter. It's essentially a short video pitching people on why they should, join, pay for something, enroll in something, or take action on learning more about buying something. We developed our own version of this called a Miniwebinar. It's a more robust version of a VSL. which I'll share shortly. So this is an example of a beauty program. We're running a mini webinar too. So they watch a mini webinar video from ads, they watch a mini webinar video, and they just straight book a call with the salesperson. So let's walk through the pros of this funnel. Pros is you can book a consistent flow of calls, sales calls daily, instead of like a webinar where you have an influx. The cons is if you don't have at least one dedicated full-time salesperson, like the business owner kind of taking a day or two to do this might not work the best. You need like ideally at least one dedicated full salesperson, because you need a lot of touch points in this funnel. The salesperson needs to engage them as soon as the call comes in. But let's go over the potential choke points of why a mini webinar funnel could not produce cash flow for you. Let's say someone watches a video, they're like, oh, this career looks great. Let me schedule a call to learn more about the program. You got to get that person who scheduled the call to show up, because in this day and age, even if someone scheduled a call, that doesn't mean they're actually going to show up, right? So that's a potential choke point. How do you solve that problem? Of course, you got to do the basics right. Good email nurturing, good SMS automations. The next is once they register, they're led to a confirmation page. On that confirmation page, it should be very robust, because while you have their attention, they book the call, you're going to have them learn more about the program, what the next steps are, what the call's about, break down frequently asked questions, show them proof and testimonials that you're awesome, and get them excited to show up for the call. It's very important, the confirmation page. The next is salesperson engagement, as I mentioned. As soon as the call is booked in, you want to do something like this. Hey, John, I saw you scheduled a call with one of our advisors. Or you could be like, hey, saw you scheduled a call with me tomorrow to learn more about a beauty program. I'm one of the career advisors here. I'm just checking in to just introduce myself and answer any questions for you before the call happens. I have some resources. I'm going to send you over email that you may want to check out. So that's the best way to do it. Then last but not least, good old-fashioned content retargeting again. So once someone scheduled a call, right? Let's say tomorrow, right? They're going to open their whatever platform they booked, they first saw the ad, couple more times, right? So you want to retargeting them with videos, testimonials, social proof, more pros and cons about how the program works. Last but not least, the ultimate choke point is a close rate, right? We see times where, especially with trade schools, they don't necessarily have good salespeople. They have admissions people, because that's traditionally how the industry was run. It's not really salespeople, it's admissions people. Sure, I get it, but is reliant on a great salesperson who has great sales experience. A two-step opt-in funnel. So here's an example, right? Someone sees an ad, they see an opt-in page to learn real quick about what this is. We get their just phone number, email, they fill that out, and they go to VSL where they schedule a call after watching the video. So that's a good old two-step opt-in funnel. Works incredibly well if done right. So pros and cons. So pros of a two-step opt-in funnel: it's great for selling to the general mass market. That means it's people who have incomes generally from zero, if they're unemployed, right, up to even 250K a year. Somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot of the general market, because it builds micro trust. Like they take a micro action, like filling out their contact details here, and they get something, right? They get a video training. So it builds a little bit of micro trust. It's a great list builder if you have an outbound setting team. So with this information, usually we have like a call center type. We call them setters. Some companies have internal setters. Some companies have more of a call center. Some companies have real salespeople doing this, where it's like aggressive volume game. You're contacting them aggressively to schedule a sales call. So a great list builder if you have an outbound sales team, a setting team. What are the cons of this type of funnel? It builds friction with people who are ready to go. Imagine you're ready to spend $10,000 on a program. This type of funnel doesn't work the best if you don't have that outbound salesperson or sales team, because you're building a list and usually juice that list and book sales calls to generate revenue off that list. It's kind of like free leads. So you're not going to maximize your ROI if you're not working those leads aggressively real time, and you're just relying on people booking a call on the next page. So let's go over financial projections. So with each of our clients and potential clients we're going to work with, for each of our funnels, we go back and forth, we strategize. We're like, okay, based on everything we know about you, we believe the mini webinar funnel or XYZ funnel is going to do the best for you. And we walk through projections of how it could look like in the first couple runs, and then how it looks like at scale when it's working well. So here we have the webinar funnel projections, micro events, the two-step opt-in, and the mini webinar as well. So we'll go through each one of them. Here's where you'll see the actual choke points. So let's first start with the live webinar funnel. This is an example of a first webinar, even like the very first webinar a company has ever run. So let's say you're new to live webinars, you have PTSD about it perhaps, and you're like, I want to just start my feet wet, get my feet wet. So remember, you have to have a critical mass of people in the live webinar showing up on the webinar to have ROI off of it, right? Like you're not going to spend 50 bucks on a webinar, pray 2 people show up and try to close 2 of them, right? That's just, the odds are not in your favor. You gotta have the odds in your favor. So usually you want to spend about at least $1,000. Might be able to get away with 500 bucks, but about $1,000 is a good place to start for your first couple or first webinar. These stats here I'm gonna walk you through are generally the low end or the high end of the averages that we're seeing on our end. So to start, let's say we're doing a lot of testing in the beginning, especially if it's your first webinar, to see what messages resonate. So your cost per registration to get someone registered for a webinar, let's say might be on the high end, like $20. Let's say you get the average rate to webinar show rates is about 30%. So let's say you got about 50 people registered, 20 bucks per registration off $1,000 spend. Let's say you got about like 20% of those people to show up. So that's 10 people in a room. Remember, this is starting really small and it's the very low end of the numbers. And then you get 15%, you get like 2 people to book a call, super on the low end, right? I mentioned you want at least 30% booking a call. Out of those people who book a call, let's say like one of them show up, one of them doesn't, and you close one of them. That's generally how your first webinar could go. So if you're selling like a $5,000 program, you've turned $1,000 into $5,000. And you got a 5x return on your ad spend for every dollar you put into the webinar. All right, so we're gonna financially model out micro in-person events now. So again, first in-person event, let's say you're like, I'm a little scared, skeptical, spending money on this in-person event. What if nobody shows up? Oh my goodness, right? So you're like, okay, spend $750 on this, right? Again, the cost per registration is higher than a live webinar. So let's say on the higher end, we get 1 person to register for 35 bucks. You get 71 people registered to come into an event. Our show rate's usually about 50, 60%. So let's say it's 40% to start. 9 people to show up in the room. Remember, you want about 20 people, but 10 people in the room you can get away with for the first 1 or 2. And then you get, out of those 9, you get 4 people to book a call with you. Usually I'll show up for the call and then you close them. So you turned $750 into $5,000 in revenue and you got 6.7 return on your money. Again, so modeling out what's that bump up to get the next sale. It's very important in your first couple events. Now, the mini webinar funnel. So this is a monthly ad spend we're gonna see here. So let's say remember there's a front end application before they schedule a call. So let's say we spent $1,500 for the first month for the mini webinar to get someone to fill out the application. Not everyone who fills out the application is gonna proceed to the next step of booking a call. So let's say 80% of them book a call, $50 an application. You got 24 calls booked. Your cost per call is $633. So let's make it more conservative, right? The first month, get $75 to register for $75 to have someone fill out an app. You get 80% of those people who schedule a call. So your cost per call is about $94. On average, we get about 65% of people who book calls to show up. So let's say you're on the super low end to start, 40% of people who book the call show up. So you're talking to 6 people that month and you close 10% of them. So you'll close like 1 deal. So in that case, if your program's like $10,000, you turn $1,500 into $10,000 in revenue. So next month, let's say you're like, okay, this is working well. I'm gonna scale budgets. So you're spending $100 a day in ad spend and our ads and funnels get dialed in. Cost per application goes down to $60. You get about 80% of those to book a call. You get about 50% of those people to show up for the call. So you talk to 20 people that month and you get better at your sales process. You close 4 people that month and you turn $3,000 into $40,000 in revenue and you 13x your return on ad dollars. The next is going through that 2-step opt-in funnel. So let's walk through it for a couple months of projections, right? Let's say we start at $100 in ad spend. We spend $3,000 a month to get somebody to register in this front page. Let's say on the higher end, it's $35 to get someone to give us their contact details, right? So the cost per registration on the front end opt-in funnel for a dialed in funnel that's ongoing is right now about $20. So let's say it's $35 when you start, right? Because you're just starting out. And then you get about 10% of those people who filled out their contact details and went to the next page to schedule a call. So you got 9 calls booked. So let's say 50% of those showed up for the call. But also remember, the beauty here of this funnel is that you have leads to work here because only 10% of the people who fill out their front end lead form booked the call. So you got an outbound sales team You got 10% of those leads to book 9 more calls. So your cost per setting call went to $171 per call. So also very important in this funnel is you have a setter who's like the front end salesperson, and then you have a closer who's the back end salesperson and ultimately closes the deal. So the setter takes the first call. We call the Shaq and Colby model, and then the closer takes the closing call. So let's say out of those 18 calls, 50% are scheduled to the next call. So that's about 7 calls. Closing calls for the month, 5 calls show up. And then, you close 25% of the people you talk to. So you close about 2 deals. So let's say your program costs $10,000. You 6.7x your return on money, right? So there you have it. We went through all the 4 funnels, pros and cons of each funnel. We did the choke points of where the choke points could be, the pros and cons of each funnel, and how you solve those choke points. So next, let's talk about our launch process with a new client. How do we go about launching a new client? So we have a pretty streamlined process. So if we're working on meta ads, we have a process. We call this a launch roadmap, a campaign roadmap, and we have a launch checklist. We have a process of launching, getting accounts access. So we have exact SOPs on how do we get access to certain accounts. We have a marketing brief here where the client fills out for us to understand deeply about the program. We learn a little bit more about the sales process as well. We have our AI call center, which we can help implement for certain clients as well. So we have scripts. So for example, this is the mini webinar. We have a script. We script it out for the client. We script out ad videos for our client as well. We script out ad videos. We script out the mini webinars, any type of video asset that's going to be used. We script it out for the client. The client records it most of the times. Sometimes we'll have actors record it. We work on the ad copy. We work on the landing pages so we get access to the website. We get the client's final approval, and then we go about launching. So what does the client handle? What do we handle? Client handles giving us access to accounts because the client has access to that. We make it as easy as possible with SOPs on step-by-step, how they exactly access. If we need to jump on a screen share, we do that as well. We record the scripts. Client records the videos. We do the editing of the videos. Client shares any past videos that they have. It's usually just all on their YouTube channel or Drive. We create the ad copy. We set up the campaigns, the ads. We set up the landing pages. We usually set up the automations, the email, the SMS. Client gives approval, and then we launch. We like to communicate real time over Slack like this. Why wait a week or 2 to have scheduled meetings? Obviously, we do that at times as well, but we usually just talk real time over Slack. Updates, talking about things that we need to talk real time, obviously over email as well. We do scheduled time on the calendar as well, ongoing, but we usually talk real time. And then whenever we talk about something, we need to talk about something more complex, we'll just set up a call for that day or the next day and then talk. Anything outside of that, the client needs to give us about at least 24 hours of a heads up if they want to meet about certain topics. So we just have time to prepare for that. And there you have it. That's how we go about doing a strategy session with incoming client as well as prospective clients to make sure we truly advise them and do our job right. So this video that I just shared with you uncovers and reveals behind the scenes of how we actually strategize and advise clients to make sure they're going to have the best growth and the highest return